What's up guys, my name's Luke and welcome back to Motion and Design. So it's the second time I'm recording my video. Again, I messed up, same as last week where I recorded the entire thing and then only to realize that there was an issue with it. Except the issue this time was I clicked the wrong button. So yeah, it's a little bit annoying, but let's get into it. So I recently did a tutorial on Marcus's, aka 3D Bonfire's Patreon, where I kind of created this like cloth creature. And I wanted to do this like series on these like useless creatures. I was messing around with cloth and I used a formula field in the cloth and it created this like weird procedural animation, and I was like, oh, this could be really cool. Kind of created this like weird kind of creature looking thing. If you guys want the project file, it'll be up on my Patreon, but if not, a like and a subscribe because it does go a long way. But yeah, without any further ado, let's get into it. So we're going to start out over here by adding a plane. Let's make this plane pretty big, something like that. Let's go and add a cube. We're going to make this 2 by 150 by 500. So the reason we're doing it this way is that if I add a vertex map and add some subdivisions to our cube over here, we add a formula field, you'll see that the formula field goes this way, and that's the direction you want it to move in. So let's go and rotate our cube, bring this up over here. We should do that. Actually, we don't need it to be that big. Maybe like that. That. Cool. So now with our cube, let's go and actually wait, let's figure out our formula field first. So this is what's going to drive our animation over here. So inside of our formula field, we have a few variables that we can mess with. So I'm going to change this to 8, and you'll see that when I change that, it changes the contrast over here. And I'm going to change this to 900, which is going to increase the frequency of these. So now we have that, but that's going a little bit too fast. I'm going to make this 25 in the speed. And now we have our moving vertex map, which is exactly what we want. Let's just go and increase our subdivisions a bit. Something like that should be fine. We can always adjust this later because luckily it's a pretty nice and procedural way of working. Cool, let's go and add our cloth tag over here. Cloth, and inside of our stretchiness, bendiness, and target length, we're going to put our vertex map in each of these. We're going to set our target length to 120, our stretchiness to 100, and our bendiness to 500. Obviously, you don't need to use those exact ones. They just worked for my tutorial. So let's press play now, and falls through. Let's add a collider tag onto our plane over here, and now it falls down, and it kind of just like jerks around, which is kind of what we're looking for, but I know that isn't really what I want unless that's what you want, but I presume not. So we're going to add our balloon over here. We're going to put our vertex map over here. If you had to press play now, it's kind of going to, freak out. But I found that the best things for this was 8 and an expansion of 10. This is specifically for this cube. If you're using a different object, this effect works with a bunch of different objects, by the way. If you're using a different object, mess around with these settings until you find something that works for you. But I found that this worked for me. So now when we press play, yeah, that's what we want. Now it kind of looks as if it's like crawling along, which is exactly what I wanted. I thought that looked pretty cool, and I was like, oh, that kind of looks like a creature trying to crawl along the ground. So let's go and add some animation to this. So I wanted to move this direction. So let's set a keyframe over here on the X, go to our last frame, and let's move this along, something like that. Let's change these to linear. And now when we press play, the exact same thing will happen, but if we want this to follow our animation, we just need to go over here and turn on mix animation and with forces. But you'll notice that it moves along, but it doesn't really react the same way that we want it to. So all we need to do is turn down the strength over here. So let's set this to about 0.1, and now you'll see it still moves along, but now it will still retain this movement. Yeah, it's a pretty useless creature, but I really like the look of it. I think I'm going to add just a little bit more pressure to our balloon. Let's set this to 10. See what that looks like. And yeah, I like that a little bit more. Has this like weird jumpiness to it, but I really like that. So another thing that you can do, which I only realized when recording this tutorial, was that in the mix animation, we could set this to, let's go over here, set it at 0.1, and we could set this to maybe 0.2 over here. And what's going to happen now is that it's not going to follow this for the beginning, but then as soon as it hits this keyframe, then it's going to start following it a little bit more. And you'll see that we get this effect where the top is going to stay up. You see, now we have the top that's kind of staying up. And if you put this a little bit further forward, you can get that now we have the top kind of staying up, and it kind of looks as if, you know, I don't know, it kind of looks like the head of a snake, to be honest. We could turn this even more. See what 0.3 looks like. Might be too much. Yeah, it's way too much. Although, I mean, that does kind of work, but not really what I'm going for. But yeah, mess around with these settings. I'm sure you guys will create some like really cool stuff. Also, if you create some like really cool creatures, I'd love to see them. So let's leave this like this, and we're going to use this as our animation. Kind of like that the head stays up, and I guess the only problem now is that we're kind of losing a bit on the expansion of the balloon. So let's maybe set this to 15. Yeah, I'm gonna have to keep it like that. I think actually in my original animation, I left it at 0.1, but when messing around for this tutorial, I figured this out and I was like, oh, actually I quite like this. Cool, so let's go and increase our subdivisions on our cube over here so we can get a bit more detail in this. So maybe set this to 40 and set this to 150. It's going to be, it doesn't crash. Let's see, is it still fast? Yeah, still pretty fast. Cool, I like that. Has a bunch of detail, a bunch of folds. I think that looks sick. Cool, let's go in A and let's create some dirt on the floor, because this looks cool as itself, but I wanted it that as it was kind of moving along, it's kind of like picking up dirt and like moving dirt aside. So let's go simulations, emitters, and let's go basic emitter. We're going to change this to a cube. Let's set this to 2, and let's increase the X over here and the Y, something like that. Let's also just bring this down so it's not colliding. So like that, and then we're going to set this to shots, and we're going to set this to maybe 200,000. We can always increase this later. Let's turn off our speed, and we're going to set our radius to 0.25. Because I want mine, I mean, if you're going for like sand or something, make it bigger and add a bunch more, but I wanted it just to be pretty much like just dirt on the floor that it's kind of picking up. And so now if we press play, nothing happens. It does not interact, it just kind of sits there. What we need to do is we need to add gravity to the scene, and we also need to add a collider. So usually you would add these into our particle group over here, but I'm going to add 2 separate particle groups, one that sticks to this and one that stays on the floor. But I want the gravity and the collide to be applied to both of them, so that's why I'm kind of leaving it out of this particle group. So now it should fall and it should interact with the background and this. But you'll notice that these things are kind of jittering around a bit and moving a lot. We can solve that pretty simply by going into our collider here and turning down the bounce to 0. Now we will get what we want, lands, and as this thing moves along, it leaves a bunch of dirt and it kind of like piles them up in like quite a natural way, which I really liked. Cool, so I'm gonna actually change this to red, just so that you guys can see it a little bit better. And this is gonna be our first version of our emitter. Actually, wait, no, sorry. Let's make this one the sticky one. So let's go and add a modifier, and we're gonna add a stick modifier. Let's put this inside of our particle group, and now when we press play, they fall, but nothing changes now. So the reason that this is happening is that this stick multiplier makes sure that anything that is touching the particles, it sticks to. So at the moment, it's touching the floor over here thanks to our collider on our plane. So it's sticking to our floor before it's sticking to this. So we can fix that by taking our collider of our plane and putting it in the stick over here to exclude this. So now it will only stick to our object over here. But you'll notice another problem is that when it falls down, it kind of creates this like border around it. So the reason for that is that our radius is set to 10. So let's set this to 0.25, the same as our particle radius. And now it should work. Yep. Now it only sticks when it touches it. And now we have this kind of like dirt and particles that are stuck to our object over here. I mean, you don't need to add this. I just thought it added like an extra layer of realism and an extra layer of simulation, which sometimes just helps selling the effect a little bit more. Cool. So unlike that, let's go and add another emitter. So let's go simulations, basic emitter, and we're going to do the exact same thing. So let's go cube 2. We're going to make this pretty big as well. And like that. And then our properties, let's set this to blue. We're going to change our speed to 0 and our radius to 0.25 as well. And also set this to shot and also set this to 200,000. Now they'll both fall. And now you'll see that both of them are colliding and having gravity applied, but it's only the red ones that are sticking to this. So now some of them stick, but the other ones get left behind and kind of creates this like weird dirt effect, which is exactly what I was looking for, because it kind of feels as if the creature is moving along the floor. Awesome. Let's start the texturing. So let's just bring this up a bit and let's open up our render. Also, here you can see this is what I created, 30 minutes ago when I recorded the last tutorial. But let's go and recreate it, I guess. Cool, so let's just do some basic things now. Let's go and select each of these and add our redshift object tag. Inside of these ones, we want to set these to optimize spheres. And inside of our cube, we want to turn on tessellation so that we can get rid of all those harsh edges. Cool. Let's go and create some materials. 1, 2, 3. So this and this one are going to act as our dirt. So let's apply these to these. So there we have our dirt on our floor. You can see already now kind of looks like dust. And this one is going to be applied to our floor over here. So I'm going to make this a kind of darkish black, so it's like quite reflective. And I'm going to go over here and add some dirt to the ground. So in general, I'd recommend, actually using a texture, but I can't upload textures, so let's just use a noise for now. Let's put this into our roughness. Let's make this 1000, so it's pretty big. Let's find a noise that looks kind of like that. I think will work. Let's just up this contrast. Please we invert. It's actually kind of difficult to see. Let's go and add some lights. So let's add a dome light. I'm just going to use a free HDRI. It's called Studio Small 08. And now you can see that we have some light over here, but this doesn't work. Let's move our invert. Oh, I delete the entire thing. And let's also just bring down the brightness over here. Yeah, we want it to just be kind of subtle. And let's rotate our sphere till we get something that looks quite nice. I don't mind these reflections popping up over here, just because of the fact that I was going as if, this is like a creature that you recorded on the table, so it's kind of fine if we have these like realistic reflections in the background. But if you're going for a more MoGraph look, don't do that, then it'll look kind of like cheap. But yeah, I think this works fine for now. The only thing that I want to change right now is the size of these particles. Let's set these to maybe 0.25 as well. Maybe 0.5. Yeah. I want it to be quite subtle. I mean, you'll see in my render that you can see them, but they're not like in your face. They're more just there to add just like an extra layer of detail to the scene. But yeah, I think that works. Let's start working on the texture of our main hero over here. Let's just set up this. We're going to add a blender. Let's duplicate our material. And let's add a vertex attribute. And inside of our vertex attribute, we're going to drag our vertex map. So now you can see that we have 1 and 2, which is exactly what we want. So let's just focus on the 1 for now. I'm not going to go too in depth of how I went about texturing this. I'm going to show you just the method that I used, and then I'm going to leave it up to you guys to do the creative decisions. So let's go and add a max on noise. We're going to plug this into our transmission, and let's add a bump map. And we're going to plug this into our bump over here. So let's turn off our base color, turn up our transmission all the way, and let's solo our noise, and let's find something that we like. I think that looks pretty cool. I just want to turn up contrast over here just a bit. Something like that works. And now you can see that we have our weird thing over here. Let's go and add some color. So we're going to add a ramp over here. And I'm going to mix between a dark blue, and a more neon blue. Something like that. I think that's a little bit too neon. Yeah, I think that works for now. Looks a little bit weird, but I quite like it. So we're going to take these, let's copy and paste them, do the same thing over here, transmission color, put this into our bump over here, turn this down, turn our transmission all the way up. Let's go and solo this. Actually, we can just keep the solo button, forgot about that. And let's change up our noise over here to something else. Maybe that looks kind of weird. Let's make this bigger, something 500. If it does something like this, just reload the render and then it should be fine. And then let's change these colors up a bit and make it like a little bit more purple, maybe a little bit more orange. I guess that's what I did in the previous one. Oh, that's weird. It's kind of cool. See, I forgot to solo it, but yeah, I mean, that is pretty cool. Let's see if I made it a little bit more orange. Yeah, I mean, actually, I think that's pretty cool. Let's just make this a little bit lighter over here. Can we bump that up? I mean, I think that looks pretty cool. Obviously, you can mess around with the colors. Like to put in perspective, let me show you what I did for the original one. So this is my render over here. It looks like there's a lot going on, but you'll see that it's the exact same thing. It's a max on noise going into a ramp and bump, and it's just transmission and also the roughness over there. And you'll see over here that I have another one, exact same thing, noise, ramp, bump, another one over here, noise, ramp, and bump over here. So it's pretty much doing the exact same thing, but it's just messing around a little bit more. You'll see that with the second one over here, I did another material blender between two different noises so that I could get a more detailed look. But I'm not going to go into that for the sake of this tutorial. I'll leave that up to you. As you can see, it's a pretty basic way of texturing, but you can get some pretty cool results from it. Let's just let this. Cool. I think that looks fine for now. I think maybe just like changing up the barrier, maybe anyway. 1.5. Nice, yeah. I think that looks nice because it kind of has this like realistic feel to it. Let's just add a camera over here. I'm going to set this to like 80mm. Something like that. We can add a bit of depth of field, select over here, turn on our bokeh over there. That might be a little bit too much. It's maybe 2, 3, just so it's a little bit subtle. And yeah, I think that looks pretty cool. So the next thing that we can do just to make the scene a little bit better is that I wanted it, so at the moment you can see that it's leaving this behind, but it's not very evident. So a nice fix that we can do for that is that let's just let this move a little bit further, is that we can have it that the texture of the floor changes as this thing moves along it. So let's go over here, add a vertex map. I'm going to drag our cube into it. So if we look at our plane over here, there's not many subdivisions, and so if this vertex map is not going to be very accurate. So let's go and increase our subdivisions. Maybe let's go 200 by 200. And now you can see that we now have a nice border around it. We're going to change our cube to surface. Let's change the surface to something like 5, so it's just over there. So now you'll see that when it falls, it leaves our nice vertex map over there, but it fades away instantly. So what we want to do is we want to add a decay over here. And if we leave the decay as it is, it will work, but it will fade away pretty quickly. So you'll see as it moves, fades away. I mean, maybe that's what you want, but I wanted it to linger a little bit more. So I'm going to set this to something like 98. You set it to something quite high so that like it still fades, but it stays there for like majority of the time. And yeah, now look, it slowly starts to fade, but it mostly stays there. And that's what I wanted. So let's go and press play over here. Let's go into our floor texture. Let's add a blender again. Material blender. Let's add another one over here. Put this into our material color. Add a vertex attribute. And drag our vertex map into it. So now you can see if we make this a little bit red, that's leaving behind this. So let's maybe make it like a darkish blue that is like kind of leaving behind, as if it's like kind of leaving a trail. And yeah, now as this thing moves along, it's going to leave some little dirt particles and it's going to leave a nice moisture thing around it. In my original render over here, if we look at the floor, there's the plane. I added 2 different textures. These are both just like dirt textures, and I had a different one for each of them, just so that as this thing is moving along, it leaves kind of like a different type of residue behind it, as if, it's like it was wet and now it's leaving like little drops behind it. So yeah, mess around with different textures and create a pretty cool look. And the nice thing about this setup over here is that it is procedural, so we can always add things. We can add more subdivisions. You can change up the object that you're using, and it's pretty easy to iterate and change up the colors as well. I mean, let's just get into, I guess that's more of the same. Swap these around. Now this one's more blue. I think the only problem is that this is, yeah, it's big over here. So maybe if we make this like a black, maybe that looks a little bit cooler. Maybe if we add more of this, also add this into our roughness over here. Maybe the same thing with this. You can get some different results, and it's quite easy to iterate on this, get a bunch of different looks. So yeah, I'll leave that up to you guys. I feel like I've given you guys the tools of how to do this. And now you can create a bunch of cool creatures, and this method works with a lot of different geometry. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you guys haven't seen the tutorial that I do to Marcus's channel, go check it out. It's pretty cool. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.